Is this post-rock enough, man?
You see, man is an oppressor, a dominator.
Everybody hates me. Nobody to love me. Everybody hates me. Wanna burn the whole world down.
That sounds like the Sigma.
I'm Patrick Bateman.
That's a really nice card. Look at detail. The lettering is so perfect.
You see, the Matrix is trying to take me out, trying to do these things, make everyone emasculine. What's wrong with that? Weak men create hard times.
Hard times create strong men.
And strong men enslave women. So why does the mainstream media seem to hate this man? This has been Tucker Carlson.
On to the hate.
Wow, the left-wing media. Left-wing media.
It's not too late.
Wokeism.
Hold on to the hate.
Barbie is super feminism manifest.
Look, I just saw the Barbie movie. Okay. I want to suck her toes. Suck her toes. Margot Robbie. That one scene. That's all I wanted. That's all I wanted. Number 1 on WikiFeet. WikiFeet is probably one of the most last bastion of free speech.
It's alright.
It's the last bastion of free feet on the internet, and we have the right to defend that.
It's another dream. I just wanna scream.
Deviancy. Degeneracy.
Sexual deviancy.
We're back at it again, boys.
I
with
want to
another
say
fire track.
the N-word.
Now, guys, we're back at it again with another pod. I'm Joe. This is the American Meme Podcast. I'm Joe. I'm here with my good co-host,
Vincent.
and we've also got special guest and musical extraordinaire,
Matt.
Maticus Emphaticus is back.
I like to call him Matt Black, Matt Blacked, Matt Attack, Maticus, Matriacus,
Maticus, Mr. Maticus,
Matthew,
Maticus,
Ratthew.
Steal Your Girl Emphaticus.
Dude, I'm always like, Matt, look, dude, whatever girlfriend I have, dude, I just want to watch.
Dude, honestly, since you brought up Matt Attack, I've always had this amazing genius idea of getting a group, a band of Matts together, and calling them Matt Attack. Everyone in the band has to be named Matt.
That is a great gimmick.
And so, what we could do to be more generalized, we could do post-hardcore versions of
And then your
doo-wop
first hit single's got to be
songs.
called like Matt something, right?
Yes,
like
it's all
Matt in
Matt
the title.
based. It's all Matt based.
Or it's called Doormat. You have a song called Doormat, and it's about being stepped on.
Kinky way?
No, in like a kind of a sad boy Tumblr way.
Actually, I've really I've come up with my first single. It's gonna be called Matter.
Ooh, Maticus.
Matter.
Well, guys, we're back with another episode. Now, the last episode was easily the worst episode, but
It sucks. Oh my god, dude! The amount of vitriol I've got online, the amount of leftist crybabies coming at me for being transphobic and homophobic and racist. I'm like, look, the sky is blue. Obama kills children. And Matt tickles little boys.
But guys, we've got a great show lined up for you today. Vince has seen Mission Impossible 5. I have 8. What's it called? Dead Reckoning. Dead Reckoning. And I have not seen it, but we're gonna get Vince's full breakdown. Spoiler. Actually, non-spoiler because I haven't seen it. Mission Impossible is one of my favorite franchises, honestly. It's the most underrated franchise of all time. Matt, what do you have?
Matt is on the attack tonight.
All right. After that, we're going to have a very long rant from Matt. He has recently discovered the secrets of the universe, and I think it would behoove us all to listen to the word of the wise Messiah, Josiah and Matt, having a spiritual battle of the mind. But
me and Matt do get into it about spiritualism because Matt really doesn't like determinism, and he fights me on it all the time, which I like because there's an element where you have to take control of your own life, and it's hard psychologically to do that if you actually believe in determinism. Do you get what I'm saying?
yes.
It's like, okay, well, what do I care about? What matters if everything that happens was always going to happen?
What matters is matter.
So here.
Well, doesn't consciousness matter?
Yeah.
Like the state, like people suffering, doesn't that matter?
Of course it matters.
I think that's why, have you ever heard JP talk about, I feel like he was depressed at the time, but he was like, suffering is the only real, is the natural state of the universe of consciousness is suffering. And I kind of get what he's saying because, to be alive is to desire. If you think about it, what really makes a person is if a dog wanted a wife and kids and a stable income in a household, we would be like, oh shit, dogs are, we need to respect them like people.
All I'm gonna say is, in order to accept life, you have to accept slowly dying.
Slowly, yeah, okay.
So I've been studying Buddhism recently, and in the Buddhist belief, it is to be free from suffering is also to be free from desire, because desire creates suffering. So to be free from both, you want non-attachment. You neither want the suffering or the desire, because inherently, from wanting that desire, that's what is creating your suffering.
But to not want something is to want something.
Right. So I think I think the Buddhists are kind of tongue in cheek about that, because it is kind of self-defeating. Because
that's where you get the JP, like life is suffering. Because if you want to not suffer, then that's a desire.
But it's like the urge to be better. It's like, well, why do you want to be better? He's like, well, because I'm not perfect as I am. But it's like, okay, well, who's in charge of that? Well, I am. Well, it's like, well,
who defines perfect?
Well, not only that, but if you're behind the wheel of your own journey to perfection, you're destined for imperfection. Because you're just an inherently selfish person, which is already an imperfection. It's a false starter.
But
it's a no-go.
Don't you have to define perfection in order to move towards it?
Sure, but I mean, even then, there's no such. It's.
What is perfection?
God.
What is God?
The universe.
This room.
What is the universe?
Everything.
And nothing. All at once.
Okay, this is the paradox of spiritual of true spiritual.
It's inherently paradoxical.
It is. You have to accept it and kind of live in that.
So this is my thing. This is where we're always on opposite spectrums. Like you have your determinism. Everything's already planned out. We have no free will. What I get from that is always, nihilism. I always go to depression when I try to believe it.
That's your take.
And that is my take. That's my own.
That's your perception.
That's my perception and axiom.
It's not a put down.
Right, but for me, it's my own put down because it doesn't function and work for me in the same way that it might work for you. So I'm on the opposite end of like, believing in the paradox, and through that paradox, I'm somehow creating like my own meaning in life through that. I am choosing the choice to have free will.
Well, Matt.
Well,
You need to watch Tenet, is all I'm saying.
And I did watch it. I watched it, and it made me believe that more. I watched Tenet, and it made me believe that more.
Well, the message in Tenet is that kind of like your perception creates the meaning.
Your experience
Yes.
and perception creates the reality that you're in.
Because Tenet presents this time travel movie, right, where there's time travel, but you actually can't change anything. Like, if you go to the past, you always went to the past. You're already living in the future where you went to the past and changed something. You're already living in that. But you still have to go. And at the end, they say that the message is, yes, everything is pre-planned out, but that doesn't mean that our actions are meaningless. And he literally says that. Like, he says that verbatim.
It's not an excuse to do nothing. That's what he says. Which is right.
Right, but that's where you get desire. Like, that's how desire enters the mix into determinism. Because, like, okay, if you fully believe in determinism, then you wouldn't have any desire, right? Because you can already see the future.
We did have this discussion beforehand that if you, as a three-dimensional being, were to experience life on a fourth-dimensional plane, first off, I already stated that it's impossible to perceive that with the 3D brain filter, because our brains aren't designed that way. But let's say for the sake
our
of
brains are filtering things in slices of time.
Right. But if you were to be a being outside of the third dimension and existing on a fourth dimensional plane, all of life, all of existence, all of everything is happening all at once. So you literally wouldn't have room to want anything. You would be an inactive agent, an inactive puppet going through the motions. And I think experience cannot exist like that.
And is that really what we want for people?
No, dude, that's why we're here. Because God doesn't want to be God.
No.
To be God, to be ever existent, to be eternal, would be a fucking drag.
So I was.
Yes, I think God doesn't do anything, right?
He experiences himself through us.
Yes. And so I was listening to a Kabbalah talk today, which is Jewish mysticism, which, the rabbi was going on to explain, like, the secrets of the Kabbalah, essentially that God created the Big Bang in order to experience his reality in lower dimensions. And so the whole basis of Kabbalah is to be an empty vessel to experience God in these lower dimensions, in the third dimensional plane. And then, going up into higher and higher dimensions.
Right, but it's kind of like, because I feel that, but then it's like, okay, well then what is the best way to live?
Well, and that's the cool part.
As a three-dimensional being or as a fourth-dimensional?
Well, that's why we need religion. We need the religious structure to facilitate that event happening. To
what
be,
event? Fourth-dimensional viewing?
No, to essentially be a dwelling place for God, to be a channel of that energy.
Can you expound on that?
This is really heady stuff.
I agree.
It is. We're coming out of the gate pretty deep here. We're just diving right into the deep end. But we were talking before this, so you guys missed kind of the first part of this conversation. But Matt didn't bring up the Kabbalah stuff. So if God wants to perceive this is what I can't understand. This is the paradox. Like, okay, human beings naturally are three-dimensional, right? We're perceiving time. We're looking for patterns of cause and effect, and we're trying to engineer the future as best we can, right? Based on what we've observed in the past. But fourth dimensionally, if you could see the future, you wouldn't necessarily want anything, right? Like Vince said, because you can already see it, and so you wouldn't desire to be anywhere else than where you are because it doesn't make any difference.
But it still serves a function. That's why we're not in this plane. We're in this plane created for a specific reason to enjoy this universe and to create something out of it.
Right. So is the ultimate goal to be like the perfect three-dimensional being where you're living in the present and experiencing every moment to its fullest? Or is it fourth dimensional where you don't actually want... Well, maybe those are the same thing.
Here.
Because if you could see fourth dimensionally, maybe you could live in the present better. Because you're not desiring to skip past whatever it is you're experiencing now, whether it's positive or negative. You know what I mean? Like, if you could see fourth dimensionally, it wouldn't matter if you're having a negative experience. You would live in that. You would savor it because you know it's going to pass.
It's
you
just
know
like,
exactly when it's going to pass. So you kind of want to savor whatever it is happening in the now. Does that make sense?
I have an analogy. So let's say this is like a common analogy. So let's say you have like a newspaper in front of you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you see the words, you see the whole entirety of it. And would you consider that the correct viewing of it? I mean, objectively, no, but like let's just say all of us had the same perception here. Let's just live here right now.
Sorry, you're looking at a big newspaper?
Right, you're looking at it. You're looking at it. And you see it, right? And we can all agree, like, yeah, those are words. That's the objectively correct.
Here's a picture in the corner.
Right. We're all seeing the same thing, and we're all agreeing that this is objectively what it is.
Okay.
And that's a correct viewing of it. I mean, it's not wrong.
Okay.
Okay. Now we take a microscope and we go a level deeper, and we start to see all the pigmentations of ink, and the perception we had outside was the right perception, but then now we're looking at it from a different perception, different angle, different point of view, a different perspective. Well, that's not a wrong perception either. It's the same thing.
It's a zoomed-in view.
Right. And we can go even more deeper. We can go subatomic. We can start seeing all the little particles that exist.
An electron microscope.
We can start seeing all the particles that exist, maybe even some germs.
Mm-hmm.
But they're all the same thing. They're not different. So, in a way, whether we see third dimensionally, fourth dimensionally, fifth dimensionally, this is all just a matter of perspective. It's all the same. They're not different.
Okay, I agree with that, but there might be an optimal resolution. You see what I'm saying? Like, if you're looking subatomically at a newspaper, you can't read the words necessarily. Because you're looking at atoms.
So
it comes down to utilitarianism.
This is the desire for meaning, right? Where is the
what resolution gives you the most meaning?
Right, and I suppose, but that wouldn't necessarily mean that any viewing of this thing is wrong.
Well, it doesn't mean that it's inaccurate.
So,
right,
but it may be not It may be not useful.
You're right. That's right.
So, like, if I'm looking at the atoms of the newspaper, those are functionally the same as other atoms of the same type. You know what I mean? I could be looking at an apple, but if it's got phosphorus or whatever in the ink, and I'm looking at that atom, then it's functionally the same.
But you doing that zoomed in view, it's in the 3D world, in the 3D mind, the 3D brain filter, it's putting you in a state where it's like, oh, these atoms are separate from this newspaper. So the more zoomed in you go in, our perception of consciousness and human condition is that, looking at these atoms means that it's something different. When, like, in Eastern philosophy, what they're trying to get at is like, no, we're all one with everything. Like, the couches we're sitting on, like all this stuff, we're no different from it.
But that comes from zooming in more.
Right, because the more you zoom in, the more
you zoom in, the more you realize, like, oh, matter is actually, like, if you go subatomic, it's actually all just energy, and matter is probably just energy in a different state.
So you get to a point in that that
like
field.
quarks, like subatomic particles, quarks. Like the more you zoom in, the closer you get to the reality that everything is the same. Like, you see what I'm saying?
Well, in the idea out there with like David Lynch and transcendental meditation is that
I've heard of talks.
when you zoom in so far into all objects and atoms and matter, they're all being manifested from the same unified field. Like we're all connected through this unified field together.
Yes, but what is the optimal resolution? Like, so, but if you were to perceive reality at that level all the time,
we can't.
Is that
That's enlightenment.
Would you actually be living a better life, quote unquote?
Well,
perhaps. I don't know. That's what I'm asking. I'm legitimately asking.
What goes through my head is, I'm not even sure that's the right question, because what's the motivation behind that? Do you want to read the newspaper? Do you want to know the functionality of how these ink blots sink into the paper? It really all depends. Like, what is the functional utility that you're trying to derive from this newspaper? If you want to read it, that's fine. If you want to see what's underneath it, that's fine. It's all derived from the want. But there is no right way depending on what you want.
Right. Is there okay, so that's the real question. Is there a right desire?
I don't know.
And how could we determine that?
Well, in the thing with desires, like me wanting to see the atoms in the newspaper, it's completely separate as opposed to the complete opposite of accepting everything as one and whole, and living out that reality of the self, or that state of Zen,
the oneness
being.
of the universe.
Yeah, the oneness of the universe. Because at that point, you understand that.
Wait, is that different than what?
So that view is no different from like zooming in, because at that point you can zoom in as far as resolution as you can into the quarks, into the unified field. Mm-hmm. But if you're in that state of everything is oneness and whole together, then I think in my mind I would have no desire to wanted to zoom in. Like I could, but I already understand it on a level that I don't even need to do that. I already know it's there.
Okay, but so if you know that's there, then you're talking. That means you're essentially saying that. Okay, well then the optimal resolution is a little bit more zoomed out than that. Than like the quarks and the energy and the oneness.
Well, it's a paradox. It keeps coming into a paradox, because the more you zoom in, the more bigger your picture gets, or the more you zoom out, the smaller your picture can get. It's like just complete opposites.
Right. Like the more you zoom out, the more discrete things seem. Like feel like, okay, you're a person and you're a person and there's a couch, right? And then if I zoom out more, it's like, okay, here's a planet, there's a planet. There's a planet.
Right, or even the human body. Like, I call myself I'm Matt, but I also have these organs, these inner working organs that, is my liver me? Or am I a whole person? Like, or is my skin me, my finger?
Right,
it's like,
is your amygdala...
what is my definition of I at that point? So, like, if I zoom in, like, to my arm and, like, see all the hair follicles, the cells, all the mass and the meat, does that change my definition of myself? I think
if you amputate your arm, is that a part of you leaving? Are you not the same Matt? Are you less Matt?
Am I less of a Matt with less matter? But
I would say yeah.
Well, if you want to go through that mode of thinking, through the ego of like, oh, my body is me, I am this thing. But in the Eastern way, it's the opposite. It's like, I am one with the universe. I am.
Right, just because you only have one arm or one hand, that hand is still a part of you, essentially.
Yes.
Like your two hands are still a part of you, even though it's disconnected from your body.
Yes, it's still there somehow.
Even though at this resolution it looks like it's disconnected, on some level, like you're still connected to everything, right?
Yeah, like those particles that exist to make matter are still going to be ever present no matter what. Even if matter is disintegrated into a billion little pieces, the material that is matter is always here.
Okay, see, this is where I feel like Christianity is an evolution on Eastern philosophy, because...
I have a story about that, dude. So
give it to me.
So apparently, I've been doing some philosophy lately. I've been doing some deep dives into the Christianity stories.
Yes.
And so my understanding is Jesus becomes like 14, and then he's kind of gone for a while. and never really written about.
Okay, quick aside, that may have been written by like one of the early popes because they were debating on whether Jesus was a physical person or a spiritual person, and all of the records of Jesus being a child come after that debate was happening, like in the 2nd century. Go ahead.
But so there's like these missing. There's like a missing section when he returns to. Does he return to?
Yes, he's 30, and he goes. So there's a gap between Jesus as a child, and then they skip a bunch of years, and then Jesus is an adult. He's 30 years old. He goes into the wilderness. He gets tempted by the devil, and then he comes back out of the wilderness, gets baptized by John the Baptist, and then starts his ministry for 3 years, and then he gets crucified at the year 33.
So okay, they don't really. So where was he when he left?
Well,
was he in Bethlehem?
So when he was 14, he was in the temples, like studying all the stuff, asking
But
all.
where?
I think
I believe in Nazareth.
in Nazareth.
Where does he come back?
He comes out of Egypt on the donkey in the Bible.
What does he return to?
Okay, so in the Bible, he goes when he returns from the wilderness. He meets John the Baptist, and I forget where exactly John the Baptist was prophesying about the coming Messiah.
Right. But
That's where he returns. Like when he returns from the wilderness, he shows up at John the Baptist. John the Baptist is preaching to people. He's called the forerunner of Christ, prophesying about the coming Messiah, and then when Jesus appears, he baptizes him and basically tells everybody that like this is the Messiah.
What's really interesting is in what Vince is mentioning in these books that are missing.
It's somewhere in Israel. I can't remember.
Somewhere in Israel. So
I don't know if they specify where John the Baptist was preaching at the time.
So when he's 14, he goes on like a world journey. Essentially, like there's a lot of speculation in like books.
This
that
is
are
all
coming
speculation.
out.
Yeah, this is not in the Bible that Jesus traveled around, but there is speculation that Jesus traveled to the east, possibly, and talked to Eastern mystics.
So and there's
Eastern mystics.
And there's proof. There's proof in other religions, like the Dalai Lama confirms that Jesus had talked to the Buddha or something like.
Yes, I've heard that.
These
the Dalai
different
Lama
things,
said,
different
yeah.
stories where like Jesus has shown up in these different cultures and forms, and so there's speculation to go on to say that like Jesus was studying in the temple at 14, and he went to go throughout the entire world to different religions and mysticisms to learn all the secrets, like Kabbalah. Like I heard recently that Jesus was a Kabbalist as well. Which is very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't
like it's all very symbolic. Like Moses, Abraham were also Kabbalists, which was
They weren't Jews.
They were Jews, but it was like the old
Kabbalah is like Jewish, like
Kabbalah
sorcery,
is
witchcraft,
is Jewish mysticism.
Yeah.
But the thing with mysticism, it's like a force that can be used for good or evil, just based on your intentions. So like it's this power that's out there that you're basically manifestation on a very watered down level.
It's witchcraft.
Kind of. It can be witchcraft, but it can also be healing. It can also be like, the light element of it.
Yeah, it's like spiritual manipulation of some kind.
Yes. And so from the point Jesus was 14 to 30, it's speculated that he went out to like, go study Buddhism, go study all the Egyptology and all these different things to incorporate these things into his own ministry and practice, which to me makes a lot of sense. The more that I study these things, like it seems like
the healing myths of Jesus.
Yeah, the healing miracles.
That he raised the dead, he turned water into wine. The miracles of Jesus, like they have to come from somewhere. So he probably did do some kind of what looked like supernatural stuff.
Right.
And so at least look like it, if not actually.
And today that's like, seen as channeling, like you're channeling like a different energy. Like, and a lot of this is a big proponent in New Age stuff, like the Seth material or the Course in Miracles. The Course in Miracles, I don't really believe in a whole lot, but it's really interesting how it was made, because in the Course in Miracles, it was two strictly atheists. They didn't have any theology. They didn't believe in anything. And somehow they were able to channel like this other entity or being within like a week.
Ram Dass?
No, Ram Dass is an actual figure. That's an actual guy. And so with somehow these atheists were able to channel this otherworldly thing and write a whole, like, essentially they call it the New Age Bible. And so a lot of people believe like this is the next iteration of Jesus coming out.
What is that called?
A Course in Miracles.
Okay.
It's very hotly debated. I don't know if I believe that it's the next iteration of Jesus, the next new Bible, but it's showing you like
it's not.
I know
the next new Bible would spread like wildfire, like
Right.
Christianity did in the first century.
But it's interesting.
And second century.
It's interesting because through this channeling, these people are writing these automatic things that they did not come up with.
They claim to have not come up. Like Joseph Smith, the guy who created Mormonism, claimed to be channeling
Yeah,
an
he got the
angel
tablets. The
of
angel
somebody,
came down.
and
See,
yeah,
that's where it gets like heady. Where it's like was this just psychosis coming out and like developing a Jesus God complex? Like Marilyn. Charles Manson, it's a very similar kind of slope on that way.
yes, or possibly somebody finding psychedelics and thinking that they're God. Like that's a common.
Yeah, like I take these mushrooms and I think I am God because of this.
Yes,
because I'm creating my reality.
And yeah, and they're not wrong technically, but
I think it's the
they
wrong
take it too
perspective.
far.
I think
Yeah.
the perspective is taken too far, and like they go into psychosis. It goes into madness.
where it's like, yeah, you are God, but just a piece.
But so yeah, you're a piece of it. So the analogy I always like to use is, I'm not my parents, but I'm through my parents. I'm not my mom or dad, but I'm elements of them. But who's to say I am my dad or I am my mom? I'm not either. I'm a combination of those. I'm from them. So it's not like so much I am God. I have a divine spark of God, of consciousness in me.
Yes, the apple seed contains the apple tree, but when you plant it, that tree will not be the same as its parent tree. Its branches will unfold differently.
But it's still an apple tree.
But yes, but at the genetic level, it's still a combination of its parents.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's kind of like a perception thing. Like if you zoom in far enough to the DNA, it's like, okay, yeah, here's the mother tree and here's the father tree. And yes, plants actually do have sexes. It's true.
Yes.
But when you look at the manifestation, the branches unfurl differently than both its parents, and it's totally unique in its own way.
Right, giving the way for individuality.
It's kind of like everything is like a remix of the past.
Well, that's what stories are. That's myths and religious structure is just a story that is orienting us to this transcendent state once again. It's just told in a different way, like Star Wars or like Christianity. Like it's these myths are just reinterpreted for our modern times in a way that we can understand it properly. Like the Epic of Gilgamesh was probably like a giant mythos to orient people towards this structure. Versus now, like we're a lot more, everything's
What structure?
blown out.
Because that's got to be God. That's God, right?
That's what I'm trying to figure out. So like in all religions, they're all going down to that base point of, connecting with God and having that experience. Mm-hmm. So in any structure, in Sufism, in Buddhism, in Christianity, in Hinduism, in Native American stuff, they're all getting to that base level experience of experiencing God in some way.
This is why I think there's kind of like this big discrepancy in like our taste in media, because I think what we would consider to be the greatest piece of art or literature or anything of the sort are the ones that have almost a transcendental element, like whether it be architecture, writing, poetry, movies. There's a slew of shit that don't seem to have anything that quite breaks through. But then every once in a while you get the Raimi trilogy. That
you
makes
get Barbie.
You get Barbie. You get these pieces of art that reach up to the skies and try to touch God.
Well, and so with movies, with what's interesting now, it's like in ancient cultures we had all these stories and mythos to orient us. So now in today's modern culture, our new mythos are movies. Is Marvel, is Star Wars, Harry Potter. All these things are orienting us back to that same state once again. It's just obfuscated.
I'm sorry, I gotta interrupt that.
But we can't recognize. But we don't recognize that.
No. We do recognize that. We do recognize that. We do.
In what way?
The fact that Blue Beetle is going to bomb. The fact that the Flash is going to bomb. We have an inert desire for transcendence.
Dungeons and Dragons,
we
dude.
recognize when it does not meet the mark. We feel disgusted. We feel like a waste of time. We feel like it was fun, but it wasn't for me. Whether you choose to believe it or not, there is something that connects you to the greater whole of everything. And when you come out the theater feeling like you felt like you were
wasted
in another
your time.
I was going to say in another dimension.
Mm-hmm.
You can't quite put your finger on it, but you felt like you had an experience.
When a story captures you.
Yes.
That's exactly how I felt after I watched Shrek.
Dude, legitimately,
Shrek is the perfect, like, it transcends all mythos and stories at the time, and like recapitulates it into like something brand new that makes us think differently, that helps us orient.
It is because even though it's a postmodern fairy tale, it does recognize God in the sense that the real message of Shrek is that you're not what you look like. There's an essence beyond the physical that makes you you.
There's a transcendent
and that
function.
is what is important. And that's the message of Shrek. The first Shrek is that Fiona and Shrek fall in love because they're able to look past the material world. And so even though it's a postmodern fairy tale, at the core, it's a religion. They recognize God. They recognize that like every individual. Yes. It's a tenuous connection, but the recognition of God is there. It's that everybody is a piece of God, and you, even though you look like a monster, right, or you're totally ugly, like that is the message of Shrek. They're like, no, you do have value despite being a hideous creature.
Despite what you are perceived as, that is not your. That may not be your
There's
actual reality.
There's an essence beyond the physical.
Yes, there's something transcending all of that.
Yes.
And so that's what gets him out of the swamp. Whether Shrek realizes that or not, there's that transcendent function making him realize.
Can we just break down Shrek real quick?
Sure.
Can we just break that movie down? We'll get to the Mission Impossible review pretty soon. Don't worry about it. But this is hot. This is getting hot.
Uh-huh.
This is getting hot. So let's break down the story of Shrek. Can we just get the synopsis breakdown really quick? Shrek 1 was a film developed by DreamWorks Animations in 2001 as a joke.
Born of Revenge.
Born of Revenge.
It was a total spite. Do you know the story?
I heard the story that if you were on the Shrek project, that was done on purpose to fuck with you because you weren't up to snuff for some other animated project at the time.
Dude, Shrek is DreamWorks' first movie. DreamWorks Studio, the Kung Fu Panda, Boss Baby, all that. Shrek was the first one from DreamWorks Studios. The guy was passed up. The guy who started DreamWorks worked at Disney.
Yep.
He was one of three, he was the number two. He was one of three number twos, and he got passed up to be the number one, the head of Disney Animation. So because he got passed up, he left, he quit Disney, got investors to start DreamWorks, and Shrek was their first project, and it was a huge success.
It was their first modern myth. And it was a huge success.
It was specifically made to be an anti-Disney movie. That's why it's a postmodern fairy tale, because the guy was like, oh, we're going to make a fairy tale movie that's making fun of all the Disney fairy tales, but we're going to make it better than Disney.
And they did.
They actually fucking did it.
There's not much about... Like, you have Lord of the Rings, you have different things, but, like, you know, as much as funny and, like, of a joke Shrek is, they really created a near perfect world of fantasy that not many other movies have done.
It's a postmodern fantasy. The postmodernism is to make fun of Disney at the time. The 90s Disney's Renaissance was Disney was doing modernist fairy tales. They were doing Little Mermaid. They were doing Lion King.
Oh yeah.
They were doing
Beauty and the Beast.
The Beauty and the Beast. Okay. And they were huge successes. And so the whole reason that Shrek is a postmodern fairy tale where they're like, oh yeah, all these fairy tales exist, but we're going to make a movie about the villain of a fairy tale, an ogre. And he's going to be the protagonist. And that's the postmodernism. But it was early enough. It was, it was 2001?
Something like
where
that.
they still had a recognition of God in there. Like God was still there. And so you could make a postmodern fairy tale that recognized God, and that's why it was a huge success. Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
Here's the thing.
Am I talking out of my ass?
No. Here's the thing. Like, I think the greatest works of postmodernism, I know people like to shit on postmodernism to some degree, but there are some actually good pieces of work that do have that recognition of something greater than the societal whole. Some I can think of would be The Matrix, Fight Club,
Yes. Yes.
Metal Gear Solid 2.
Oh my God, I didn't even think about The Matrix, but The Matrix is like, all the action, all the guns, it's not real.
Yeah.
On some level.
Right.
But they make it have meaning.
Right.
Like, even though all these, 1,000 bullets off of a turret, it's just happening in a computer, but they ground it in reality, and so God is still there. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
No, yeah. So I think
it's a postmodern doesn't mean bad, and that you have to discount God.
Mm-hmm.
No, okay. Sorry, go ahead.
No. I think you're right. I think that's why I think postmodernism as a whole kind of gets a bad rap, because you could even argue that those pieces of art aren't actually postmodernist. Aesthetically, narratively, sure, but
essentially,
in essence, yes,
they're modernist movies. Yeah.
So this is also reflective in every other industry as well, as well as art. So art had its postmodernist phase in the 50s or the 60s. I don't remember the exact time.
Mm-hmm.
To the point now where we've got to abstract expressionism, which is the one true art form made in America is abstract expressionism. But abstract expressionism is abstracting the ideas. Art Deco? What's Art Deco?
It's European?
I don't know about Art Deco.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
You're good. And so it's just in line with postmodernist movies. It's just getting more abstracted, like you were talking about earlier with the Neville Heat Death. Essentially, the movie sphere that we're creating is it's getting so
the energy is getting dissipated.
The energy is dissipating so far out that it's gonna come to a point where it's so just disjointed that's eventually gonna have to smack all back together and start over again somehow.
Oh my God, dude! I never thought about that for the art, but there is an energy that's dissipating.
It's becoming more decentralized.
Yes, I've actually felt this in media, where we're getting to a point where we're already at the point where your Instagram feed, your Twitter feed,
everyone's a producer.
It's curated for you specifically, and nobody is seeing that feed. And in media, it's the same way, where there's gonna be shows. If this continues, there will be a show that nobody is watching but you. It's made algorithmically only for you. But nobody wants that. Nobody actually desires that.
We want a collective experience.
You do. You do. You want something that other people can recognize the quality of.
Yes. To justify... Because you need that to define your taste. You need other people to say it sucks or to say that it's good. Whether we choose to recognize it or not, that's kind of the whole fun of art.
Yes, I think that's why we'll never get to the full extent of this movie or show. Yeah, we're getting close with AI, where you could potentially, I could see in the 10 years down the road where you just ask ChatGPT for a show, and you could even tell it the vibe and what some of the things you want to happen.
And it gives you seasons and it fleshes it out.
And yes, and it will give you 6 seasons or whatever you want of a show that's just made for you. But nobody really wants that. Nobody really wants something that only you think is good.
But
There's a collective good that people want to strive for. And I think, before we get to the individual feeds, like, people will recognize that and reject it.
And this is the paradox of individuality of personal meaning, because we can watch the same movie and get totally different personal meanings out of it. And so for me, my basis is that I don't really look for other people's opinions for what I like. I like it for specific reasons. Like I always make this reference with music. So like, I have my favorite albums. I can listen to Anthony Fantano talk about these things, but his opinion, his views don't matter to me because the music relates to me in a personal way that is for the individual. It's only for me and the connections that I make.
Yes, but if you're thinking fourth dimensionally, if nobody else but you thinks an album is good, then that means that no more of that music will be made.
Right.
So in reality, you don't want to be the only one that recognizes the quality of something.
Well, let's put it this way. If look, let's just put this. Let me give you an analogy. How many directors out there put any of their own films in their top 10 list? It doesn't exist.
They hate their films.
Not a single one.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
So if we're all the directors, we're all the producers, we're all creating our own shows.
You wouldn't think it was good?
No, we wouldn't. There would be no surprise. We need a surprise. We need novelty.
Right. Part of quality is novelty. Like, that's an essence of what we perceive as quality.
Not knowing what you want. Because if you know what you want and you have it,
you won't want it.
You'll realize that it isn't what you want.
You won't want it because you have it.
If you say I want you to plan a surprise party for me, well then you don't want a surprise party.
Right.
Because you're telling me that you want it and you already know, you're expecting it.
Okay, that's a great analogy.
You want someone to pop out and give you a little shock. You want to be surprised by what people have to offer. And you want everyone else to see that too.
And so like with movies, with all this individuality, it's like, with The Matrix is the perfect example because so many people created community and togetherness based on the quality of the essence of The Matrix.
Facts.
That we do agree upon all these things and like, oh, you saw The Matrix, you believe the same thing as me? I feel more connected to you now. I feel that deeper understanding because we both see the quality in this movie and there's more people out there that also see the quality. And so like with me in music, it's like, I believe I have a good music taste. Everyone does. And so
No.
I would hope that people believe they have good taste.
No.
But it's just like, my favorite albums, I know they have that quality, and I know there's other people out there that have that same sense.
Music that is straying away from God's touch.
Oh yeah, punk music. Pop punk. Pop punk, yeah. But still what I'm getting at, it's like, let's say my favorite Under Oath album, I sense that quality, and so I know other people out there have that same sense of that quality that they understand and know. So like that's creating the community for me. So when they mention the album, it's like, oh, you listened to that as a kid too? That's so cool. And so that's creating community around that quality, that essence and idea.
What are you saying? That good art, that like if something is truly good quality, then there will be a community there?
Yes, the essence will bring the togetherness of people. And so I think art is that sense of expression of the soul trying to bring people together in a abstract way.
But then that would mean that the Transformer franchise is of some quality.
It is.
So
I guess it is because there's a community. By match standard, if there's a community around it, and there is $4 billion movies were made about the Transformers, that I don't think... Well, actually, now I kind of do see something there. It's not quality in the traditional sense, but I do see some kind of a vision there where I don't dismay that the first 4 Transformers movies made $1 billion.
It's an external form of that essence. So like in Transformers, Fast and Furious, all these other franchises.
Fast and Furious, another great example.
That's another perfect example where it's like, it's like
the MCU, sure.
All these franchises, they see this essence and they're trying to artificially manufacture the essence to make you believe that there is this essence in this franchise in these movies.
That's true too.
So it's like a fake version.
I call that the media industrial complex, right? So when you have like these,
where you can create the facade of quality.
Oh, like
yes.
Indiana Jones. This looks good, so it must be good.
Well,
what I'm saying
the last
is,
Indiana Jones did not make money.
What I'm saying is like you can let's say there's a lightning in a bottle, right? You got your Call of Duty 4, you got your Star Wars Episode 3, you have your Modern Warfare, right? You have these beautiful works of art that actually do transcend all of experience and create this cultivation of community and life. And then you get the producers on it, the antithesis of all that is good and glorious in the world, who don't recognize the greatness that was just engendered in the world and decide to mutilate, desecrate, and spit on all the people who enjoyed these pieces of art. But now they got money. Now they got billions of dollars in the bank, and now they have investors that they can extract money from. Hey, look, this last project did really well. It's a surefire way to make some money. And then they propagate this.
Just make the Battle Royale version.
Yeah, they propagate this this disgusting heresy. But is it a wonder that this makes $1 billion again, even though it's a lower quality, insufficient product? Let me finish, please. Let me finish. That is a result of people telling you it's good, and people get brainwashed. They believe it, and they don't ever quite get out of that loop.
With the sequels?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah.
That's interesting because I do think Transformers 1 is legitimately
good.
No, but I do think it is.
Is legitimately a good movie. But that's an example of what you're talking about, where like somebody comes out with a legitimate something that like there's something there that people actually want, and then the subsequent sequels,
it's propaganda to make more money.
It is essentially like propaganda, like empty promises from the sequels.
And the really interesting thing about propaganda, like
that people have convinced themselves is good.
Yes.
At some point, there did have to be something good in order for that to work. Because if you have, like, for instance, the DCEU, they pump money into those movies, but there was just no vision that anyone was desiring. So the subsequent films, for exception of a few, were dog shit, and no one was buying it. Yes. In order for like, so you can dog shit on these franchises all you want. That's fine. I would agree with you for the most part. Like 90% of the things that came after are bad.
Yes, like
but
half
there
of
was there was something there to begin with in order to justify people wanting to see it again. You know?
Yes. I think half of Man of Steel is truly good. Yes.
Well, and so with that idea, like you see the vision and purpose, but the problem with the franchise is they release more and more movies with the incentive of capitalizing on that essence, rather than letting that essence be the function to create the community. Like Hellraiser. Like Hellraiser is a perfect example. Hellraiser 1 is amazing.
It's incredible.
It's so ahead of its time. But the subsequent movies that are released after that, it becomes a cash cow very quickly. Like by Hellraiser 3, it's already a cash cow, and they're just using like, oh, look at this cool essence and idea. Hellraiser 2 is like fine. But Hellraiser 1 was really the transcendent movie of the time.
Yeah, I've only seen the first one, but
that's all you need to see, because everything else is just like a cash grab. So it's like what I was getting at with propaganda, the psychology of propaganda is that nobody is immune to propaganda. So if you see something enough and you hear it, your community is spouting that, you are going to believe it whether you want to believe it or not. You're going to be bullied and pushed into that view eventually by the things that you watch in media.
Like the right wing?
Like the right or left wing. It's politics. But the polarization of it.
Dude.
I mean, I do see that in politics where like...
Dude, Tim Pool is totally on the right-wing Kool-Aid now, man.
What's he talking about?
Well, he had like this pod with like this DeSantis woman.
Supporter?
Yeah, she was like a gay against groomer person, which is like something he should ardently agree with. But she was talking shit about
She's
Trump.
a lesbian against grooming?
Yeah.
Okay.
So she was talking shit about Trump, and he was basically saying, he's like, I don't know why anybody would use the vaccines against Trump. Like all of a sudden everybody starts caring about this. Like no one knows anything about like the study, the process of creating a vaccine. I'm like, nigga, you were not spouting about this for like 3 years in a row. Like you didn't absolutely condemn the vaccine, but you were saying like that is
questioning it.
That's a negative aspect of the Trump administration. But he's so on his tip so bad. He likes to like claim that DeSantis supporters are like a cult. I'm like, dude, so are you. Like, so are the Trump supporters, dude. Like, it's like the kettle calling the pot black. And then he said, like, he told her, he's like, I don't think you really care about vaccines. She's like, what? Yeah, I do. Like, it killed my mom. And he's like, well, I don't think, he's like, well, before that, you didn't, like, that was never a political standpoint for you or anybody else, really. I'm like, I don't know, dude, something that affected millions of people. Like, yeah, we're kind of pushed into this political stance, whether we want to or not.
That's the propaganda.
It just baffles me that like right wingers cannot recognize like they themselves exist in an echo chamber of ideology and propaganda, you know, like I don't know.
Nobody wants to admit that they live in the same mix as everybody else. Like we're all swimming in the same water. Everybody would like to think that they're actually standing on the river banks and they're not flowing in the same river as everybody else. But
we're all together. But with politics, it's a division campaign because if I'm a conservative and you're a full liberal, we are automatically pitted against each other. So like in the headspace of a Christian conservative, mimetically, yes, yeah. We're pinned against each other, which is the whole object and goal of politics is to divide the people so we don't unify.
Yes, there's words that are meant to trigger certain responses. There's memes that are meant to. So if you support the vaccine, you're a liberal cuck. If you don't want to take the vaccine, you're a conservatard. Okay.
If you don't want to expose the satanic pedophile ring, you're automatically a terrible person. You're QAnon. But the other thing I'm getting at is oh man, this is really deep, dude.
Say it, dude. We're already there.
So like what really like boggles my mind right now is like when I read Jesus' teachings in the Bible, what my interpretation of it would be, if I put it in a modern sense, he seems like more like a liberal, more like trying to help the whole world, which in the conservative headspace that is totally against what they're trying to do. So
yeah,
it doesn't make any sense to me for the the hard right-wing Christian conservative to be against the teachings of Jesus. It's like I've been fed this propaganda to believe this certain kind of way, and it trickles down into tradition when I'm not actually seeking the truth for myself.
Yeah, there's like cultural conditioning that kind of prevents the true message of Jesus
from getting out.
Right.
And so
on both sides.
Yes, on both sides, because there's the left Jesus, the right Jesus. It's just your perception of it. And so with that, it's like the certain languages you develop and use. So like, if I'm around Christians, I'll use a certain Christian language. Not that it's bad or good, it's just a language that these people understand. So if I say anything outside of that language, it's like, oh, you're not speaking my language. You're a Satanist. You're this. You're against me because you're speaking about things I don't know. It could be out of ignorance.
Right. You say if you start talking about magic to a Christian, they'll be like, that's witchcraft. But if you start talking about miracles, well,
or prayer is magic.
That's amazing. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Prayer is meditation. Is chanting.
It's manifestation.
Is manifestation.
Is meditation, yeah.
Is meditation. I see them in the way that I've studied that they're all one and the same. They're still holding that same structure, like speaking in tongues. It's vocalizations orienting you to a certain state of consciousness. All these things are orienting you to a certain level of consciousness, which is that transcendent function to experience God.
but there's different languages that have been developed, and
Right, so when
there's
I'm-
kind of cultural barriers to crossing the language barriers.
When I'm a Christian, I'm praying to God. So when I hear somebody meditating, that is something I don't know about. So I see it as that's not from God. Meditation is not from God.
Yeah, it's paganism, it's witchcraft.
It's witchcraft, it's paganism, it's evil. But even the Bible, there's literally a verse that says, "Be still and know that I'm God." I interpret that as meditation. Meditation is being still and knowing that God is there.
Well, Joshua 1:8 says to meditate on the word of God day and night.
Right.
So
it's like all these different languages are being, because if you talk to a Democrat and you speak a different, like if you say like, you know, right wing language, they'll pick up on that and possibly attack you because they think you're against them because you're mentioning these languages, and because you're saying these things, you have these ideals. They're making assumptions about your beliefs without actually knowing your beliefs.
yeah, it's like mimetic programming that creates barriers, imaginary barriers.
It creates
between-
safety. It creates safety in an idea, because if I can believe in a certain idea, I have a community surrounding that idea. I don't have to think outside of it. I'm creating safety and tradition in this practice, and I have my four walls and no more. I don't have to think outside my own experience. I don't even have to know my own experience. I can follow these steps, listen to these things, go to this church, go to this temple, and just follow this mode. Which, for me, it's the opposite. It's like, you know, understanding that this is a structure to get to a certain point. And so it doesn't matter what structure you get. I mean, to certain people, it does matter the structure. You know, like if I go to Buddhism, Christian be like, oh, no, that's wrong. That's false. But even if I were to go like heavy into Buddhism, I would still reach that same transcendent function that the Christian would reach in the church when he's, you know, the Holy Ghost comes down on him.
Yes, there's a transcendent truth to all religions that lead to the same point. But
They're all getting to the same point. And
but it's kind of like what Vince was talking about. Like there's this brain filter that creates divisions that aren't there.
Well, it has to.
But yes, in some sense, like you have to, because you kind of have to believe, like the right doesn't exist without wrong, and
There
so
is no
you kind of
back without a
have to
front.
create an enemy in order
To define yourself.
in order to define what is righteous action. There has to be sin out there.
There has to be the worship of Moloch and Baal
it
has
to exist. It serves a function.
in order for me to understand that that is wrong. Fundamentally. You know, when you said all religions are getting to the same point, I don't agree with that. I don't think the worship of just pure self or Satanism are practices that lead to true enlightenment or transcendence.
But they could.
Well, so Satanism is a little bit different because it's more like a postmodernist religion.
But it's also like, are we talking about pure Satanism or Luciferianism?
Well, just
Because
like
Luciferianism does have an enlightenment bend to it, but when it disregards the importance of a whole,
well, that's what I'm saying. It's
because the whole
postmodernist.
is just thyself. Indulge in hedonism and yourself.
Well,
And indulging yourself in order to reach, you know, because there's so the sect of Luciferianism is like the non-theistic version of Satanism. They don't believe in like Satan incarnate or Jesus, but like I am the ultimate authority in hierarchy.
I gotta take a mad piss real quick.
Go
Keep
ahead.
talking.
Matt, do you want to use the other thing while you're there? Give me my vape. You can use his. Fuck you. I think the self-indulgent bent on Luciferianism is the antithesis to what a true transcendental religion should offer.
Well, and so like what I see with Satanism and Luciferianism, it's like that postmodernist thing where like they see all these things happening in these religions, and it's like I want to do the opposite of that. But in turn, I'm not doing the opposite. I'm doing the same structure, but coming to a different realization that in the Luciferian and Satanist thought that I am that God, that there is not a God above me, that there is not a higher power or something else out there that created me. My own consciousness created this world, and that I can affect reality and have these powers and do these things.
Mm-hmm.
Which
is not entirely wrong or irrational to think.
Right. You can come to rational conclusions with that, and I think.
But
it's a slope. It's a two-sided slope.
Yeah. But I think we place too much emphasis and importance on sheer rationality. I think the pure rational thought or process is a load of shit. I do think you can do a lot of damage and destruction in the name of rationality.
There's a weird balancing act that, like, it's like any ideology taken to the extreme leads to destruction.
And maybe that's inevitable.
But there's an element of truth in all of these ideas where it's like, if you take pure materialism too far, you get this kind of Luciferianism where, the earth tells me there is no sin. You know what I mean? It's like, the sin and righteousness doesn't exist. These are human concepts. What matters is outcomes. Okay?
So,
all right, we're going to take a quick pause and make sure the recorder's working. Sure the recorder's working. Sure the recorder's working. Sure the recorder's working. Okay, yeah, it's working fine. And we've got another track going here. Matt, go ahead.
Okay, and so with the Luciferian doctrine, with this, it's like, you come... in my realizations, I come to these two slopes where it's like either I can see myself as being the creator God that creates my own reality, or God working through me in order to create my reality. Like your consciousness is creating everything, and everything, like the world only exists in your brain alone, or consciousness is coming through me to create the sense of reality that we all have, the collective consciousness.
Right, like there's an energy flowing through you that's creating your reality, and it's kind of like the multiverse theory where like everybody's reality is correct on some level.
Yes, but everyone has their own individual reality.
But the sum total of everything,
it's all connected.
Is the truth, is like the true reality.
Yes.
Like the sum total of everyone's perception of reality is kind of the true reality. And we're all just getting a slice of it. And that's why we see things differently and can still be right.
Right. That's why we can have our own personal truths and come to our own conclusions. Whereas like, you come to determinism and I come to the paradox of not seeing so much right and wrong as morality, but like more like cause and effect, action and consequence.
Well, that's the Buddhist conception.
Yes, it is.
Of the universe. Like the yin and the yang are the same, are like exist in the same sphere, and they're just like intermingled with each other.
They're
you
emanations
can't separate
of each
them.
other, and so you cannot have the light without dark. You cannot have the right without wrong. To eliminate the wrong and be right is to eliminate everything altogether.
But then that's where like Christianity is kind of the separation of yin and yang, and it's like no, God is separate from the devil, and you should move towards God and away from the devil.
Right.
And that's where the concept of sin comes in, where it's like, sin is actions that take you towards the devil and away from God. And righteousness is actions that take you towards God and away from the devil. And, which version of reality is right? Like what is the proper conception? I don't know. I've been trying to figure this out for the past year.
Here's what I've been working with for a couple years, is that the idea of Abraxas, the Gnostic God, that God is good and bad.
That's Buddhism.
Essentially, yes, that is
Eastern
philosophy.
Your suffering is the same as your
desire.
Joy.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like there's no difference, and you should just accept everything.
Right, and into non-judgment. But it's it creates like a vacuum where it's like, if I have no desire and no suffering, then what do I have? What truly am I without it?
Exactly. That's where Christianity comes in, where it says, no, your desire is not wrong, but you need the right desire. Like, desire in itself as a concept is not wrong, but it could be if you have the wrong desire, and that's going to take you towards hell and Satan, and the right desire will take you towards heaven and God. Now, maybe this is cultural conditioning, mimetic conditioning, but I feel like there's something to Christianity that we have to accept. Like, if we're going to make decisions, we have to orient ourselves towards the good. You have to have a conception of God that is good if we're all going to move collectively, if we're going to inch towards a better future. You have to believe that good and evil are separate from each other. And that through our actions and through our decisions, we can move towards the good and away from the evil.
I believe differently.
That's Christianity.
That is the Christianity.
And tell me why
method.
I'm wrong, man. I'm ready for it.
So with Christianity, they have the Trinity. God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit. It's these light beings, and so it's totally taking out the darkness, the quaternity. So in Jung, there's the quaternity of Satan being the fourth function, the darkness to the light, the good to the evil to the good.
Okay, you got the Trinity and then you got the devil?
Yes, you have the Trinity and the devil, so it makes the quaternity. So Jung goes on to say, like, without the devil, you don't have the Trinity. Like, Christianity is kind of pushing down, like, repressing the evil darkness.
Right. Like, Western philosophy is built on top of Eastern philosophy.
Right. And so I think, coming into modern times, into evolution of religion, of thought, culture, and consciousness, is that we need to also embrace that darkness. Because that...
Not embrace, integrate.
Integrate, yes. Integrate it in relation to wholeness. Because to be a whole being, you need the light and dark. You can't just focus on the light, because when you focus only on the light, you're oppressing your darkness for, to come up to attack eventually.
The road to hell is paved in good intentions. There's also there's an Eastern philosophy version of that. I think what gets the Christians kind of misconstrued is the fact that recognizing evil does not make you embrace it or want to become it. You have to realize evil as a function in order to realize the path towards goodness. Well, you imagine, like, for instance, the issue of climate change. The people who, quote unquote, let's just give them every benefit of the doubt and say they genuinely believe what they believe. They genuinely think what they're doing is good. They are actually destroying the planet even further. The climate change activists, yes, they are.
In what way?
In our attempts to cultivate, like, various minerals and ores for electric vehicles, for instance, we are creating a slave class in Brazil and all these other third world countries and making people suffer.
Cobalt mines, that you need for electric batteries.
Or the fact that Germany had stopped trade, I think, with Russia after the break with Ukraine. But then immediately we went back to really disgusting coal mines after they've been through an energy crisis. Or the fact that if you stripped away natural gas resources from third world countries, you would be killing millions of people overnight. Or stopped any of their coal cultivation. So when you have too many goody two-shoes out here trying to do what they quote unquote believe to be is the right thing to do, there is almost always irreversible damage caused.
Yeah,
or
it
when
leads
we try
to greater destruction of the natural. Yeah,
or where you try to cultivate democracy in third world countries at the end of a gun. Like, you better believe in democracy or we'll kill you. It's
oh shit.
You don't want a world full of just these teachers' pets who think they're doing the right thing.
Right. There's a point where pushing towards the good, as you can understand it at that time, actually creates evil consequences.
So I just think,
like in Afghanistan,
not saying don't try to be good, but be very wary of your motivation behind it. Be very wary of the consequences, because you cannot predict them. That's all I'm gonna say. I do think we should.
I can't remember, but solar panels. There's some sort of crystals that you have to mine, in order to get that photoreactive
Right,
membranes.
and you're still creating that slave class, that slave trade, in order to have these things happen.
There are more people in slavery now than there ever has been during the 1800s. That's all I'm gonna say.
Well, yeah, even like corporate slavery now, like jobs.
Get out of town. Are you talking about like wage slavery, like Chinese?
No, I'm talking about
workers, or-
child sex trafficking. It's $1 billion industry. Child sex workers, people who are working in sweatshops for 3 cents an hour.
Okay, so you're including sweatshops in there.
I think if you're working for 3 cents an hour, you're a fucking slave.
Well, yeah, for sure.
And prisoners. I mean, look, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying prisoners are essentially slaves.
Yes, they're forced to do that labor that they wouldn't do on their own accord. Yeah. There's like a view of the world where like all of the modern world, like the cultured, peaceful world, is like built on the backs of another class of people suffering. Like the only way that we can afford our smartphones is because somebody in China wants to throw themselves off the roof of the factory that they work in.
It requires sacrifice.
The only way that we can, that like Walmart, like all the clothes in Walmart are made by, kids and teenagers in Bangladesh, who probably, who should be out in the woods playing around and fucking around, but they're working in factories. They're working at a textile factory making the $5 shirts that we buy at Walmart.
Fucking whales.
Right, and so we have this system.
Fucking whales?
Like fat fucking people.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
making the 5X shirt.
Making the triple XL
Oh yeah,
shirts.
dude, Wally.
Yeah.
Wally is terrifying.
Well, Wally is a little bit better than the modern world because at least the slave class is not conscious except for Wally and Eva. But that is the only future that we could possibly hope for.
But what? So we have these systems created, and the problem with like breaking down into these
Techno-communism.
systems, this techno-communism, whatever it is going on, it's like we have all these systems set in place, and breaking that is going to cause like mass anarchy, chaos, and so the systems in place do not want to be broken down.
Oh no, because there's a class of people that are benefiting from them. We are that class.
Right, we're
we are the class
sacrificing.
benefiting from $5 T-shirts,
But then
$5 graphic tees that's that say this and that is loading or whatever.
Right, so like I buy that $5 T-shirt from Walmart, but I'm also in that same wage slave trap of my labor is going to making more money for a business or doing this or that. Like I think it boils down to like greed and wanting to that. Like the whole system is set in place to entice greed because I have more money, I can buy more things. Oh, I can buy a new TV, I can get all this stuff, all this materialism.
Yes, Matt, I hate to tell you this, but you and me and Vince, on the global scale, if you zoom out to the globe,
We don't matter.
we are the oppressor class.
Yes.
We are the ones contributing. We are the ones buying the Walmart clothes. We're eating the McDonald's fast food. We're eating the Whataburger.
Well, and the only way
we're perpetuating the system. We're the bourgeois. We're the global bourgeoisie. If you live in America and you're buying $5 Walmart clothes, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
you are perpetuating the system of oppression that keeps the wage slaves in China and Indonesia and Bangladesh and the textile
Yeah, it keeps
factories
running.
in the iPhone in the Samsung factories that like the only reason that I can buy a phone for $200 that works that's functionally the same as $1,000 iPhone. You know what I mean? Like it can basically run the same apps as a $1,200 iPhone.
Well,
like we're contributing to that. Like we're the bourgeoisie that perpetuates that system.
Well, so now like with money and currency, it's like my dollars are my physical power that I have. I have the power to buy this T-shirt or not. I have the power to buy different things or like buy regenerative stuff or just do differently. And I think having the constant awareness of that and trying not to participate in it is the goal heading towards the good.
That is the deception of the Western world. That
not participating will help dissolve it. Well, it's just like
no, you can't not participate.
You're forced to.
There's no version of you not participating in this.
There is, Josiah.
In this system. What?
Avatar. Living in the jungle, homesteading.
That. Not even that. If you're a homesteader, you're buying John Deere factory equipment.
You can't escape it.
You're buying fucking Lucci's. You're buying Martin boots. Okay, you're buying Walmart. You're buying fucking T-shirts.
You're buying the prep buckets.
You're supplementing your food supply. Like even the homesteaders, they need to buy chicken breast. They don't want to, you know what I mean? Like they don't want to like take a whole chicken. You know what I'm saying? Like,
but with all this is creating a lot of materialism and duality, which is taking out the function and structure of the soul. I need a homestead. I don't trust the system anymore. The government's lying to me. I have to start homesteading. I have to buy all this stuff to be a homesteader to get away from these things. But I'm still under the guise in the spiritual aspect under this same system spiritually. And
I never thought about that. There's no escape.
The escape is the Plato's cave is having the awareness of it and going through different phases and cycles of like I'm in it again. But once I realize I'm in it again, it's like that's my aha moment of getting out of it.
But are you out of it?
Are you just walking into a bigger and bigger cave with seeing bigger shadows on the wall?
Because I've always thought about like the innovation of America is that we live in like a totally rigged system where your vote doesn't really matter, but you get to talk about how your vote doesn't, like free speech is kind of like the real innovation of the West, where yes, we get to feel like we're above the system because we get to acknowledge how fucked up it is. Even though we can't actually do anything to change it, like the fact that we get to talk about it is what makes us feel like we're above it.
Okay.
Even though we're participating at the same rate as the whole global system, the whole global economy is running the same way that it would whether we talk about it or not. But the innovation of America is that we get to talk about it, and that makes us feel as though we're somehow above or we're somehow better.
Or inching away toward, or inching away from it. Like
Right,
we feel
right,
like
right.
we could affect change.
Like the fact that I know that me shopping at Walmart, you know what I mean? Like the fact, like this podcast itself is in essence is us elevating ourselves above the system, even though it's all just our perception. Because we can talk about it, we feel above the system, even though we're just as much a part of the system as anybody else, as much as the billionaires and the millionaire class.
This is the realization I had recently in therapy, is that just because I know something and understand it makes me feel like I'm outside of it. But the truth of the matter is that I'm not outside of it.
Right. Like understanding your psychological reason, like the psychological understanding
Does
of why
not
you
free
make
me from it,
decisions.
yes.
It doesn't free you from it. You're still trapped by it, but recognizing it makes you feel like you're above it.
So I actually have a good analogy for it. So I had like a friend where like they'll send me videos and stuff, and I was trying to be like, like, oh man, with all the AI stuff going on now, like I don't really believe any social media it's all propaganda and it's all like, fake. And like the friend went on to be like, yes, that's so true. And then he goes on to send me a bunch of more videos of the same beliefs that he has.
A social media post, right?
Yeah, the same social media post.
Facebook,
So it's like, I'm trying to get him to understand. It's like, I'm seeing these things as like entirely propaganda. It's like no matter what I believe, whatever I'm viewing on social media is just going to further those beliefs or what I'm looking into, what I'm putting my effort into. And so even me realizing, like whatever I put my effort into does not make me free from that idea. But we can slowly come to grips with, oh, this idea may be falsehood that I've created for myself. And so it's just the constant cycle of going through that over and over again ad infinity.
Yes, that is the innovation of America. Free speech, I actually do think, is a true innovation in social engineering and constructs, because free speech allows us the space to recognize how fucked up the system is. But the recognition doesn't actually change anything. It just creates this perception that you're above whatever system that you're in.
And
you see what I'm saying?
The thing with the ideas, the problem with the ideas, it's going against free speech again, because, if I really want to dive into the QAnon thing, I have all these memes and ideas that are so wrapped up in this. So if somebody uses a different language from my QAnon language, I'm like, oh, you're wrong, you're evil, you're Satanist. So you are against me now because you are using different language. So that is me trying to suppress your free speech.
Oh my God, I didn't realize that. Yeah, like,
Josiah, if you're not a Republican, if you don't believe in the border, the invasion crisis going on, if you don't believe in this and that, you are inherently against my ideals and beliefs, and you are attacking me.
Oh, that's the next evolution of the West.
Well, it's the awareness of that, and slowly cultivating the awareness of that is what will dissolve the illusion. And it's a very hard illusion to dissolve.
I have a question, because I'm getting tired, and I do want to wrap it up pretty soon, but I think we need to come to a final, not a final statement. I'm just saying.
Do you want to talk about Mission Impossible?
Oh, we'll do that tomorrow. We don't have a choice. We'll do it tomorrow. Then we'll do animation stuff. What time's good for you, actually?
Man, I found out my sister's graduation, going away party's at 4.
Okay, we'll try to do some, maybe some. We'll figure that out sometime.
Do you want me to meet up at noon?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, sick.
Okay. To wrap the ideas up in a nice little bow tie, with the recognition of the state of affairs that has been on the level of indoctrination and brainwashing, where do we go from here? What is the next step? Is it a cultivation in consciousness? Is that possible? Let me just keep going. I know. Please think about these things. Do not just interrupt with the first. Just think for a second, both of y'all.
Preach.
I think we've. No, I'm just saying because both of y'all look really excited, and I know when y'all get excited, you got.
I don't know.
The first thing. Okay,
I'm excited about where you're going, Vince. Tell me where you're going.
I don't know where I'm going. This is for y'all guys to discuss to some degree, I suppose. So I think we've touched on a lot of things: philosophical, spiritually, transcendental, politically, and culturally.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've hit all the talking points. Maybe not as in depth as I think we should have, but I think we scratched a lot of the surface here.
Yeah, we've gotten every resolution. Yeah.
Now we've come to a reasonable conclusion that there is something amiss. There is a misalignment in our perception, our feelings, our thoughts, and I think there's a loop of. I think there's just a relatively big loop of misalignment, and that just kind of creates more misalignment. Now, I'm honestly on the edge of thinking that maybe we might misalign so bad that we become aligned again, and I kind of feel it. I when you see the left, murder, chopping off kids' dicks, for instance, that creates a reaction. Now, whether or not that reaction is good or bad, I do think the fact that it's even a public talking point is good. So with that being said, I'm not asking for utopia. I'm not asking for everything to be perfect. But what do you think is going to be necessary to turn this ship around, if it should be turned around at all? So you guys take the floor on this. I want to hear this one.
I have it.
That's a big question, man.
So
That's the biggest question of all.
Okay.
Dude.
question.
No.
Like, what should we do now? Like, recognizing the state of the world?
Look, so my belief and what I've researched, studied, and come to my own conclusions, realizations, is, like through Jungian analytical psychology, depth psychology. And so in that mode, basically what Jung was saying is that through the evolution of Christianity, through religion, you create associations, you create certain symbols, like, the cross, it symbolizes certain things. You create certain myths and stories. Mm-hmm. And so the problem in modern times with science, with analyzation, compartmentalizing of things, we've gone so far into this that we've lost our sense of tradition. We've gone so far into Christianity that we no longer believe in it. And so coming back around to reorient society and ourselves is to come back to those same traditions, to that same religious structure of symbols, of having strong myths to orient us back to that transcendental experience of God. And so, because without that, you have a lot of, chaotic stuff going on. And so my point is that we've lost our traditions in America, in, the world today, and we need to come back to traditions to bring ourselves back to a healthy
Take it a step further, Matt. Take it a step further. Let me just interject. I understand the desire to come back to tradition, and I respect it, but I don't think it's enough. We need to transcend it. We need
transcend tradition?
Yes, we have to become Osiris. We have to gain new insight, new vision.
Oh!
We do not take it away and think it's going to work now. Destiny made a really good point about that left-wing streamer. He's like, look, we need a new ideology to cultivate the new masses. Sam Harris has the right idea, but his idea of a new vision is dismissing of old vision, and I don't think you have vision if you take out one of your eyes, and replacing it with like a prosthetic.
Yeah, you can't completely disregard the past.
So I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think you're on the right track. Now, my idea is just to let things be, to be honest, but I think you come to that at some point.
No, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying with tradition. The way I'm viewing tradition is like in a psychological aspect of not so much that we have to go back to a certain tradition, but that we need that structure of a tradition or some kind of code or moral code in order to bring us back. We cannot get away from that certain structure. We have that God-shaped void in our soul somehow.
The future is a fusion of the old and the new.
Yes, because all of our
the
stories,
trodden ground and the untrodden.
all of our stories are just being reinterpreted into new myths, into things that we can contextualize and help ourselves orient. Because, if I read the Epic of Gilgamesh, it was written like 4,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. It's not going to be relevant to me versus watching, like the Marvel series, like all the Avengers and all that. That was a strong modern myth to help me orient, if I can view it in that sense. So I guess the base of what I'm getting at is to change your mindset to see like a more mythological and symbolical life, rather than taking everything so literally. Because when I think of like symbolically, like I have different symbolic things. So if I think of the cross, I can make my own symbolic associations with that. And those are, I take the symbols literally. I'm not trying to literally interpret the symbols to somebody. I'm taking those symbols literally for myself to create personal meaning, to create, my striving function to keep on living.
Yeah, this is the Jordan Peterson paradox, where it's like he has perfectly deconstructed. He's actually a postmodernist, where he's deconstructed religion down to the psychological level.
That's what I'm getting at.
He's trying to explain why Christianity worked in the past, right? But
it's not working now.
That's not the way that it's going to work in the future.
Right, and so there's a lot of
we need new myths.
But man cannot make new
that cannot be fully understood. That there has to be an element of mystery to them in order to give the energy for people to move forward.
We need the hero to project on.
Like we need a myth that can't be fully understood in order to propel us forward.
Right,
Right,
because
to solve that mystery. And then once it's solved, that's when you get the postmodernism. That's when you get the deconstructionism. When it starts to feel like the mystery is solved and like, oh, we can deconstruct this now, right? Which is where we are now, where we're deconstructing everything. And then it has to, like, that's kind of like the heat death.
but
Now we're in a period where we need like the pre-Big Bang to happen again, where everything consolidates into a single point so that it can be spread out again.
it can burst out again.
It can burst out again.
And so with this common thing, it's like we said earlier, like just because I know it and understand it, I feel that I am free and outside of it, when really I am not. And so it's changing that perception of, knowing, understanding it, but also accepting that I am within this.
So I think our conclusion is let the world run its course. Because that's going to be I think that is going to be the inevitable conclusion. I think we just have to let the world be. I think destruction is necessary for the construction. I think, honestly,
Total acceptance.
I think World War III is inevitable. I think a lot of people are going to die. I think from my perspective is it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better.
On a personal level, how I can take all of this and bring it down to like my own personal belief and own personal practice is that I'm going to take my symbols, my own personal meanings, seriously. Very seriously. Because that helps me create traditions around those symbols and associations.
Maybe not seriously, but sincerely.
Sincerely, yes. Because, I can hold a stone and be like, oh, this will help me with my emotions. And if I truly do believe that will, have the placebo effect of actually working. So it's looking at symbols in a different light rather than, the cross, Jesus died on the cross. It physically, literally happened. Yes, it may have happened. It may not have happened. But for me, it's like, taking the symbol of what does the cross mean of, transcending yourself and, helping humanity and like seeing these symbols in the new light. Which is what the ancient cultures were doing. They would see symbols.
You're talking about post-modernism.
The next evolution of postmodernism.
Where, yes, like after the deconstruction, you still believe in the structures.
I believe we need to have the structures in order to live.
Right. That's why I'm calling it postmodernism.
So like with the cool thing with ancient cultures is that, like the Minoans, the Mayans, whoever, they had all these symbols and not so much none of it was written down. So it was all oral tradition. And these symbols, so like they'd have like, a certain spiritual symbol on a pot that they would make. So it was artwork for them. But anybody in that culture at that time that would see that symbol, they would instantly understand and know these certain associations, and it would orient themselves. The whole culture was based around that. So today it's like, what you're saying with the Instagram feeds. We have all of our own associations and symbols to where it's all, spread out, postmodern.
Yeah, it's
to where we all can't connect.
It's getting more isolated where you can, you're right.
Yes,
right.
we're compartmentalizing it more and more to the point where it's isolating us. And so
where we can't see the unity of symbols.
Yes. And so I think the important part is seeing the unity of the symbols and understanding symbols in that way, like seeing a symbolic life. And symbolism is also difficult because, you can, have the spiritual high, the
it's
light
recognizing
symbols.
that everybody's looking for God.
Yes. And with, there's the other side of symbolism because, I see people get into gematria and like conspiracy stuff. So they'll take the symbolisms of like, the Masonic symbols, and they'll create this whole narrative for themselves, this whole mythos of like, oh yeah, based on this Masonic symbol, I see all these other things related to the 13 families, to the deep state, to harvesting adrenochrome. It creates this whole
flat
world.
Earth,
yeah, flat Earth. It creates this whole narrative for me. and structure, and it feels like this is the world's greatest secret that I'm gaining power from knowing this.
Yeah, it's knowledge that explains
The world.
the world. Yeah,
This
the
knowledge
world as it
explains
is.
the world for me, as it is, as I believe, as my subjective reality.
Right, like, as I perceive it.
Yeah, I'm giving these things power. I'm giving these symbols power to basically overtake me. Whereas as like seeing the symbol as a symbol, as like a sign, as like a reminder, like, oh yeah, maybe the cross for you is like a reminder to, pray or something.
But isn't that postmodernism?
Yes.
Where you recognize the symbol as a symbol?
Yes, but still using the structure of the symbol to facilitate what it's going to do. It's knowing.
That's what I'm talking about. Postmodernism, where you recognize it as a symbol, but you still believe in it as some kind of reality.
Because that's what it does. That's why you do it.
That's Petersonian, dude.
That's what I'm talking about. Postmodernism. You recognize it as a symbol, but you still accept it as reality.
Yes, because without those symbols, without those associations, you get ungrounded, and you you don't know what to trust. Oh, my reality! I don't know how to trust my reality. I can't make sense of my world now.
Yeah,
I get unoriented, and you go mad. You get into psychosis. You do other things.
You start believing that the Earth is flat.
Right, you get into all these
really
different things.
flat.
Yeah, you truly believe all these things because
not just as a symbol to explain the world, but
it's literal.
Oh no, NASA is fucking us over with lies, flat Earth and shit. Man, I fucking hate it, but it comes back to balance. Where
Harmony. Wholeness.
Like too far in any direction leads to
extremism,
to destruction. Where you can't be so wrapped up in the symbols that you accept the symbols as complete reality. But you can't be so postmodern that the symbols are meaningless and they don't explain reality at all.
And that's what I'm saying with modern religion today, that the symbols don't explain our reality anymore.
Well, I think the sickness of Western Christianity is is the conspiracy theorist take, where it's like, no, Jesus literally died on the cross. Jesus literally rose from the grave for our sins, and you are literally going to hell.
Fundamentalism, yes.
Yes, yeah. Fundamentalism is the extreme of the symbols being our reality.
Because if you don't believe that happened literally the same way that I believe it, you are going to hell. You're condemned to hell. Whereas Jesus says in the Bible, the kingdom of heaven is within. So we're going to wrap it up. So the kingdom of heaven is within. So that means you can create your heaven right now or live in your own personal hell.
I think Nietzsche said it best. Christianity was designed and created to destroy itself, just as the Father before him and our children after us.
So postmodernism is inevitable.
As is everything. And with that being said, none of you guys have a prayer in hell. I love you all. I actually am hell because I'm fucking tired.
Hey guys, look.
You wrap up.
I don't know what the answer is, but what I will say is that
claiming to is a fucking asshole.
Look, all I know is that Lex Friedman, love is the fundamental force. It is.
Oh, now you want to get on love?
It is the ultimate reality.
Used to be against that.
Really?
Yes.
How so?
Dude, it started happening when we watched Interstellar, because I came to that conclusion of love is the transcendent function, love is the striving factor, and you're like, no, that's not it. Like,
really, what did do you remember what my objection was? I honestly don't remember.
I think you're trying to explain Interstellar in a determinist universe, in that that's already been played out, that was already going to happen, and so somehow love was not there. It was just a different kind of force or energy. But But watching Interstellar, at the end of it, like, I was, tearing up, crying, and be like, yes, love is still the transcendent function to me. That reaffirmed my beliefs in that. That across, every human, there is still that love, and love is what's keeping the world going somehow. And love is a very abstract thing. Like, what is love? There's different forms of love. It's like, is love God? Is consciousness God? It's like you're getting into really deep things here. So like
What about my love for children?
I would say that love is
My erotic love, rather.
is one.
It's your associations with love. So changing your associations with love.
I think love is like. I would say that like okay, fundamentally, that love is the desire for God in others.
God's will and acting out is love.
It's the desire to see God in someone else other than yourself.
And that's the view. That's the view I'm trying to see now. Like I'm trying to see the divine spark in everybody, the divine spark of God in everyone, in all things. That there is depth behind everything.
Yes, and I think that is the ultimate expression of love. When you see God
in everything. Because he is everything.
Yes. And everything includes every person.
Yes.
And so recognizing that spark of God in other people is fundamentally love.
Hitler was blessed with the graciousness of divinity confirmed.
Yes, I think that is the ultimate expression of love. Seeing the most evil people actually meet God and fulfilled. Like Matt told me this a long time ago. Like true forgiveness is like envisioning Hitler in heaven.
And that's a hard one.
And that is a tough one, but I think that is the ultimate expression of love. That is why I believe that hell doesn't, like in the afterlife, hell doesn't exist. Like when you die, you become one with God. Every fucking person. Even Hitler. When he died, he met God. He had the full realization.
But I think the hell after you die, the hell is what you experience, is your processing of all your consequences for your actions. So if you have like a lot of repressed stuff in life, you have to be like in the spiritual bodegas and going through all this work of like, processing your own personal hell.
Yes. Like true love would be like if you were Hitler, when you die, you put yourself, like Hitler puts himself in a state of suffering because he feels that is necessary. Like Hitler meets God and is like, holy shit, I should suffer for what I've done.
Right, and he may experience that suffering.
And he may experience, yeah, exactly. Like he may experience that suffering, but it's of his own accord.
Right.
Like he consciously separates himself from God because he feels that is what he deserves.
Yes. And so I think now, like, it's through doing like the shadow work and stuff, like, going through the quote unquote evil darkness in yourself is not so much the darkness, but the stuff that you're repressing that you don't want to deal with. And so at the end of your life, it's like you're processing all that all at once, and that can feel like hell.
Wow. Vince, do you have any closing thoughts? I cannot believe we didn't talk about Mission Impossible. We didn't talk about the Trump indictment. But I feel like we did talk about that.
No, we didn't derail it.
We did talk about that.
I knew what was going to happen the minute I said that we're going to have this rant. I'm the puppet master as always. I'm just kidding.
No, I wanted to talk about this.
I know. Look, I thought, we were having a really good discussion earlier, and I thought, well, Matt needs to get in on this, and we need to talk about this a bit more. Good change of pace. We're going to make everybody upset, but that's okay. I forgive you. I love you.
Look, we love you. Next week, we'll be back to more terrestrial topics, more
I can't believe I'm not high.
Materialist topics. Yeah, we did not smoke any weed on this pod.
We're high on life.
I am
And
a little
love.
drunk on a Four Loko, but look, guys, I love you.
Watch out for the interdimensional space beings.
Oh my God! I didn't even talk about my conversation with Satan. That's a topic for another day.
What the fuck?
Sleep paralysis, baby. I asked. He answered. He said, "I am that I'm not," and that sent shiver down my fucking spine. Oh, the same day I asked God to reveal Himself to me, I had a nightmare. I suppose God has a weird way of showing it. In order to believe me, you must know that this exists too.
Okay, guys, Vince did not bring up the most absolutely relevant personal experience that he's ever had
Breaking
on the
news.
pod, but we are roughly,
Breaking news. Vince goes to a psych ward.
That actually happened.
we're an hour 43 into the pod,
We got to stop. We have to
and
stop.
we have to end it. And look, a life is not beautiful because it continues forever. Maybe the beauty is in the fact that it does end. And there is a finite conclusion to every life. Every life must end. And maybe there's beauty in that.
Accepting death into the rebirth
Accepting the finality
of
of
your existence.
certain structures,
My closing remark. Are you
like
done?
this pod, must come to an end. Go ahead. Matt.
My closing remark is study different religions, look into the mysticisms, come to your own conclusions, and see how it shapes your world. Because I did all this practice for many years studying these things. I'm not tooting my horn by saying this, but I'm saying that through all this work, it only reaffirmed my own beliefs that I had in the beginning, but I didn't understand why I believed them. But coming out of all of that, I still believe the same way, and now I know why I believe it. I can question myself and not have my foundation shook because I know what I believe to be true. That's what I know for myself.
All right, keep your hand on the button. 'Cause
Yeah.
This is actually the closing remark.
Mhm.
No one else talk after this.
Okay.
Matt and Josiah are pedophiles.
Hashtag true. All right, boys. That's it. We'll see you next week.
Last word.